Welcome to Sophie Daddy's channel. Today, we're going to step into the cockpit of professional trading and get our heads around one of the most powerful tools out there, the options Greeks. Now, forget the complex math for a second. We're going to treat these concepts like a simple dashboard, a set of gauges that give you a really intuitive way to see, measure, and manage your risk.
You know, if you've ever traded stocks, it's pretty straightforward, right? It's kind of a two-dimensional world. You're worried about price and you're worried about direction. But with options, whoa, the game totally changes. It becomes multidimensional. An options price is sensitive to everything: the stock's direction, how fast it moves, the simple passage of time, and even the level of pure fear in the market. So how in the world do you navigate all that complexity without getting totally lost?
Well, you do it with a dashboard. Just think of the Greeks as the instrument panel for your entire trading portfolio. Each gauge zeroes in on a specific risk, giving you this real-time, at-a-glance understanding of what's really driving your position's value. Honestly, this is what separates just guessing from professional risk management.
Okay, so what are they, technically? The Greeks are just a set of values that come from pricing models, and they tell you exactly how sensitive your option is to one specific thing, like a $1 move in the stock, or one day passing, or a big spike in market fear. And by understanding each of these gauges, you can start to build a complete picture of your strategy.
So let's look at the first and you could argue the most important gauge on our dashboard, Delta. This is the one that tells us all about direction and speed.
And to really get the feel for it, I've got this little poem that I think captures its essence. A shadow of the stock. It moves in part. A 0.30 chance to win the heart. It measures speed, the first to see, and proxies a probability.
At its core, Delta is beautifully simple. It just measures how much your options price should move for every $1 change in the stock. So for example, a call option with a delta of 0.50 should, in theory, gain about 50 cents if the stock rallies by $1. Simple as that.
The absolute best way to visualize this is to think of Delta as the speedometer of your position. It's telling you how fast your profits or losses are racking up relative to the stock's movement. A high delta means you're in the fast lane. A low delta means you're just kind of cruising along.
But Delta is more than just a speedometer. It gives us two really powerful mental shortcuts. First, it's like a stock equivalent. So a call option with a 0.35 delta will behave for that next dollar move, just like owning 35 shares of a stock. Second, it's a ref and ready proxy for probability. A 30 delta option is seen as having about a 30% chance of finishing in the money. But, and this is so crucial, you have to remember this is just a snapshot in time. Delta is not static. It changes as the stock moves, which brings us to our next gauge.
And this leads us right into what I think is the central conflict in all of options trading. This constant battle, this tug of war between two opposing forces, gamma and theta.
First, let's meet gamma. The deltas change, the risk that's coiled, where neutral plans are quickly spoiled, a positive arc, the move you ride, a negative pit where sellers hide. That really hints at its power, both for good and for bad.
So if delta is your speed, then gamma is your acceleration. It measures how quickly your delta changes as the stock moves. It is literally the delta of the delta. An option that's right at the money and really close to expiration has the highest gamma, which means its delta is super unstable and can just change dramatically with even a tiny move in the stock.
And this brings us to the perfect dashboard analogy. Gamma is the accelerator pedal. See, when you own an option, you have positive gamma. This means that as the stock moves in your favor, your delta gets bigger, accelerating your profits. But if you've sold an option, you have negative gamma. If the stock moves against you, your losses will accelerate.
Now for the other side of this trade, Theta. An ice cube sits on a summer stone, a slow decay, a daily drone. It melts at noon, a frantic pace, the seller's friend, the buyer's race.
Theta is just this relentless, unavoidable force of time decay. All it does is measure how much value an option loses simply because one day has passed. It's the daily rent you pay to hold an option, or if you're a seller, it's the daily income you collect.
The analogy you see here is absolutely perfect for Theta. An option's time value is like a melting ice cube. But here's the key: it doesn't melt at a steady rate. It melts really slowly when expiration is far away. And then as that date gets closer, especially in those last 30 days, that melting just accelerates like crazy.
And this right here, this brings us to the fundamental choice every non-directional options trader has to make. You can't get something for nothing. If you buy an option, you are long gamma. You want a big move. But you pay for that privilege with negative theta. Time is your enemy, constantly eating away at your position. Now, if you sell an option, you get to collect that theta every single day. Time is your best friend, but you take on the risk of negative gamma, exposing you to those accelerating losses if a big move does happen.
So, at the end of the day, every trade is a bet on this relationship. The option buyer is betting that their potential profits from gamma are going to be bigger than their guaranteed losses from theta. The seller, they're making the exact opposite bet, that the steady income from theta will be more than enough to cover any potential losses from a big move. It's this really beautifully balanced conflict.
Okay, let's move to the next gauge on our dashboard. This one is fascinating because it doesn't measure the stock's movement or time, but the market's mood itself. Let's talk about Vega.
And, of course, it has its own poem. The price of fear, the cost of doubt, when panic reigns, the premium sprout. It's not a Greek, this star of night, but measures the unseen, volatile light.
So what Vega does is measure how much an option's price will change for every 1% change in implied volatility. And implied volatility is really just the market's expectation of future uncertainty. It's the fear that's priced into the market. When fear goes up, implied volatility rises, and suddenly options get a lot more expensive.
There are two perfect ways to understand Vega. First, it's the fear gauge on your dashboard. But honestly, an even better analogy is to think of it as the price of an insurance policy. Buying an option is kind of like buying insurance on a stock. Vega tells you how the price of that insurance changes based on how much risk people think is out there. You know, right before a big earnings announcement, uncertainty is super high, so the insurance is really expensive. Then after the news is out, the uncertainty vanishes, and the price of that insurance just collapses.
Okay, so we have our gauges: delta for speed, gamma for acceleration, theta for time, and Vega for fear. The real power, the real magic, comes when you put them all together to understand the business plan of your entire portfolio.
All right, let's look at a real-world example. Imagine this is the net Greek exposure of your entire portfolio. What story does it tell? Well, your net delta is plus 10, which is basically zero, so you don't really have a directional bet on. Your net gamma is negative 800. That's a big number. You are betting heavily against a large move. Your net Vega is also very negative, which is a bet that fear is not going to spike. And for taking on all those risks, your net theta is positive 350. You are collecting $350 every single day, just from the passage of time.
Looking at that dashboard, we know the business model instantly. This trader is running an insurance company. They're selling policies against market catastrophe, against big moves and spikes in fear, and in return, they're collecting a steady daily premium from time decay. The Greeks make the invisible completely visible.
And this brings us to the essential question the Greeks force you to answer. Every single option strategy really just boils down to this one choice. Do you want to pay a daily premium for the chance of a big payoff? Those accelerating profits from positive gamma, which is also known as convexity. Or do you want to collect that daily premium by taking on the risk of that big move happening? In the end, it all comes down to this. Are you a buyer of convexity or are you a seller of dime?
All right, the learning doesn't have to stop here. If you want to explore even more, I've built the perfect place for you at sophie-ai-finance.com to unlock a new way of learning. Think of it as your personal learning toolkit. If you just want the big picture, you can watch the video or listen to the podcast. It's perfect for getting the main concepts down while you're on the go. But if sometimes you need to hit the pause button and really let an idea sink in, you can visit the blog article. It has all the details, charts, and text from our discussion so you can review everything at your own pace. And for those of you who want to see all the math, data, and the complete nitty-gritty behind the analysis, well, I've got a full research paper waiting for you, so you can really dig into the details and see how everything works under the hood. It's all there, all for you. And hey, if you have any ideas for new topics about finance and AI you'd like me to cover, please leave me a message. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next video.